Hello, my name is Tyler, and I am here to talk about The Three Body Problem by Liu Cixin. The Three Body Problem is a three-part sci-fi series that was bought for $1 billion a couple of years ago and will be coming out on Netflix in March of 2024. But more importantly, the series just makes me incredibly happy. Anytime I'm reading, talking, or thinking about the three body problem, I'm just incredibly happy. Which is weird because the stories are S tier dark and show the best but often the worst sides of humanity. And it's strange that that would make someone so happy, but I can't really control that. And I like feeling happy. It's fun. And every time I read these stories, I discover something new. And I've made a lot of notes in the books. And so what I'd like to do is slowly go through the story, and there will be spoilers. So if you don't like spoilers, go watch Mr. Beast. I would just go watch Mr. Beast anyway. He's great. But I'm going to keep talking about Three Body Problem and some of the things that I think are incredible about the story. So I think we should just get into it because you'll see kind of why and what we're doing here as we're doing it. So let's get into it. Book 1, Part 1. Let's go. Chapter 1 is called The Madness Years, and the first part is called Silent Spring. I'm not going to read the whole books, don't worry, but the first two sentences of Book 1 are an excellent example of why I wanted to talk about Three Body Problem. I'll just read them now. The Red Union had been attacking the headquarters of April 28th Brigade for 2 days. Their red flags fluttered restlessly around the brigade building like flames yearning for firewood. The story goes on to describe rebels that are in a building and an army that is attacking them. And the army is unable to take the building and defeat the rebels because the rebels have lined this building with explosives. And the army knows this. And if they attack, the rebels will trigger the explosives and both armies will be defeated. This idea of deterrence is incredibly important in this series. And when I read this for the second time, I was struck at how much of the story Liu Cixin is telling to us before we even know what the story is about. So I don't know if it's possible to appreciate that sentence on reading the series for the first time, but the detail that is put in throughout the whole book to foreshadow what the book is about is incredible. In this opening scene, a female rebel goes to the roof of this building and flies her flag and is shot by the army and is killed. That will come up again later, but that is the opening of the Three Body Problem, is rebels in a building that cannot be attacked because it's lined with explosives. And now we get to meet the main character of Book 1. The rest of the first part of the story is spent introducing one of the main characters of Book 1. And before I say her name, let me preemptively apologize for my incredibly American pronunciation of her name. Ye Wenji. I'm just going to refer to her as Wenji from here on. And the process of her disillusionment with humanity. And that disillusionment begins in China in 1967. That's where this story is set, by the way. Very important. To say that time moves around in this story would be a gross understatement. But her story begins in what is called a struggle session, I believe, which is some sort of public shaming or persecution ceremony in China where the political party at hand was persecuting doctors, professors in this case, and this persecution would happen when that person's expertise went against the government's ideology. In this case, it was physics. So a man is brought out wearing a huge metal hat. And I have seen the previews for the Netflix series, and this is definitely in there because it's very important to this character. And this man is asked to recant the theory of relativity and the Big Bang Theory. And he doesn't recant it, but he just says like, hey, this is just, you can't recant math. 2 + 2 is 4. I can't take that back. And so, but they continue to interrogate him, mock him, beat him until he is killed as well. Remember when I said that this story was incredibly sad? We're getting into it. This is page 11, by the way. And this man is Wenji's father, and she is witness to this murder. And this is the beginning of her disillusionment with humanity. A friend of hers is also killed by the political party at large, and that's where her story shifts to the Mongolian forest. The next part of the story follows Wenji to a company called the Inner Mongolia Production and Construction Corp, where their job is to clear forest. And this is another great example of where Liu Cixin is foreshadowing book number 2, titled The Dark Forest. It doesn't take too much to patch that one together. But the analogies he's starting to draw here are really striking. And so I wanted to read 2 passages from Wenji in the Inner Mongolia Production Company as she's taken the life away from this forest. She picked up the axe and saw and began to clear the branches from the trunk. Every time she did this, she felt as though she were cleaning the corpse of a giant. Sometimes she even imagined the giant was her father. The feelings from that terrible night 2 years ago when she cleaned her father's body in the mortuary would resurface, and the splits and cracks in the larch bark seemed to turn into the old scars and new wounds covering her father. She goes on to think about the nature of what is going on. And this is, I think, an incredibly insightful look into Wenji's mind, but also what will propel and motivate her to do what she does in the rest of this book is right here. Is it possible that the relationship between humanity and evil is similar to the relationship between the ocean and an iceberg floating on its surface? Both the ocean and iceberg are made of the same material. That the iceberg seems separate is only because it is in different form. In reality, it is but a part of the vast ocean. It is impossible to expect a moral awakening from humankind itself, just like it was impossible to expect humans to lift off the earth by pulling up on their own hair. To achieve moral awakening required a force outside of the human race. Yeah. So reading that through the second and third time now, I'm just struck by how connected everything in these stories are. And now we meet the person who really seals it for Wenji. Wenji then meets a young man in the forest named Bai, Bai, and Bai is in possession of a book called Silent Spring, which is an environmental manifesto that goes over the dangers and environmental disasters of what is happening as the result of this deforestation. Wenji is enchanted with Bai and the Silent Spring, and even helps Bai write a letter to the Chinese government that goes into detail about the destruction that's happening in the forest. Bai is then arrested for writing this letter and blames Wenji for the writing of the letter and betrays Wenji. And this is what Liu Cixin has to say about what this betrayal did to Wenji. Half a century later, historians would all agree that this event in 1969 was a turning point in humankind's history. It is then that Wenji is allowed to work in a radar facility in China. She is presented with a choice of going to prison for 10 years or working in this radar facility for the rest of her life. And she immediately chooses life sentence working in the radar facility because that hope has been extinguished in her. This is the end of part one. She felt that the entire universe was a huge block of ice, and she was the only spark of life within it. She was the little girl about to freeze to death, and she didn't even have a handful of matches, only illusions. The block of ice holding her became transparent. In front of her, she could see a tall building. At the top, a young girl waved a bright red banner. Her slender figure constantly vividly with the breath of the flag. It was her sister, Wen-su. Ever since her little sister had made a clean break with her reactionary academic authority family, Wenji had heard no news about her. She only learned recently that Wen-su had died 2 years ago in one of the wars between the Red Guard factions. So now we learn that the girl at the opening of this chapter who was shot at the top of the rebel facility was Wenji's sister. As Ye watched the figure waving, the flag became Bai Mulin, his glasses reflecting the flames raging below the building. Then it turned into Representative Chang, her mother, Shaolin, then her father. The flag bearer kept changing, but the flag waved ceaselessly, like a perpetual pendulum, counting down the remainder of her short life. Gradually, the flag grew blurry. Everything grew blurry. The ice that filled the universe was once again sealed, her at its center. Only this time, the ice was black. So this concludes part one and has our main character now in a radar facility with hope extinguished for humanity. The part of this story that jumped out at me at my rereading was the flag at the beginning that was fluttering like a flame yearning for firewood, and that being juxtaposed with the hope that was in Wenji's heart, and that flag is no longer flying. It reminds me of the Bible verse that a salt needs to retain its saltiness. And that is what Wenji lost in this first chapter. Ironically, it's what I gained. It makes me incredibly happy to see writing and analogies and imagery used in this way. And this is just the beginning of the three-body problem. I don't know if we'll be able to go at this level of detail throughout the entire trilogy. I'd be here for a long, long time. Happy, but a long time. But I felt it important at this part of the story to show the beautiful prose that is being displayed while also showing some of the foreshadowings that is going on here. And so that's it. I will be back soon for the next part of the 3-body problem. My name is Tyler. See you soon.